So welcome to everybody who are coming along to Pathfinders Neuromuscular Alliance's UpLift Get Active webinar. Joining us today, we've got a number of really great speakers, but first we're just going to introduce our team. So first of all, I'm Kath. I work for Pathfinders Neuromuscular Alliance as part of the UpLift Youth Development Project team. And I live up in Middlesbrough with my partner, 3 cats. And seeing as we're talking about getting active, I really love Powerchair football. Jackie.
Hi, yeah, I'm Jackie. I work in the UpLift team at Pathfinders. I live in London, really cold London right now. And I am into lots of things. So yeah, that's me. Kyle.
Hi guys, so I'm Kyle. I'm the newest member of the UpLift team. So I'm working as the project and campaigns assistant. So I've only been here a few months now, but this is my first main big event really. I live in Carmarthen, so a bit further away from Jackie and Kath. I think Kath's quite far away from me, to be fair. So yeah, I live independently, supported by a team of support workers, and I'm also a computer science graduate as well. So that's a bit about me.
And thank you, Kyle and Jackie. So we also have joining us Josh Winterskill, who's going to talk about accessible shooting, Andrew Whitaker from Activity Alliance, Adam McAvoy and Brad Bates are going to be talking about Powerchair football, Hebe Weir and Mike Miller-Smith, who will be talking about flying and the Aerobility charity. And we'll finish off with some information about Boccia from Thomas Martin from Disability Sport Wales. There will be time for some Q&As at the end, hopefully. But if we've got any questions that you can get in touch with us and we'll get them answered later on if we run out of time for that. So we're going to be getting going at 1:15 when we'll talk to Josh about accessible shooting. Just while we wait for Josh, I thought we might share some of the things that we like to do. So I've already touched on the subject that I like to play Powerchair football. I play Powerchair football for a club in Middlesbrough and also do a bit of coaching for them. I am also a bit of a fan of trying out other things. So I recently did try flying, but I will also, in a bid to stay a bit fit, because it is quite difficult to get actively involved if you have a physical disability. I decided that swimming was quite easy to do, so I joined a gym and got involved with. I went to see if I could do swimming. I picked the warmest pool. I went and looked around all the gyms locally, and while I was there, I noticed that it had Aquafit, which I quite like music. So music and swimming, it was a little bit different. So I joined the Aquafit, and the way that I do adapted Aquafit was that I had somebody held underneath me, and I did my thing in my arms and my legs, and they moved me in the water, so I could join in with the music and just get a bit active. So that's my newest activity that I've been involved with. Jackie?
Yeah, I loved swimming as a kid, loved it. I am probably part mermaid. I played a lot of sports when I was a kid, so I did wheelchair races. 100 meters was my thing, and basketball for a little bit, and then as an adult I do a lot of art things, so a lot of singing and performing and stuff like that. So that's another way for me to keep active, is by using my lungs and voice as much as possible. And yeah, I really enjoy it, and it's fun and I have a good time, and I think that's what getting active is all about, is adapting things for you. So yeah, that's me. I'm gonna give it to Kyle. Yeah.
So I'd say mostly outside of work, I'm a big sports fan in general. I'm a massive football fan as well. So I support Liverpool and Wales, of course. So I'm a massive football fan. I love sports in general. I watch a lot of it. I recently watched the Wheelchair Rugby World Cup as well, which is really good. It's a fantastic sport, to be honest, wheelchair rugby. Football, I've tried the Powerchair before for Powerchair football, and I was thoroughly impressed by the speed of it. It's quite you feel the G's, put it that way. So unfortunately, being in Wales, we don't really have a great deal of opportunities for Powerchair football. So it's definitely something I'd like to explore in the future. So but yeah, again, I love football. Powerchair football is great as well. I've had experience playing Boccia as well, which is another fantastic sport. It's a bit slower paced than Powerchair football, but it's very competitive.
Well, hopefully we're hearing a little bit more about all of those things later, Kyle, and how you might be able to get involved in the areas that you live.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Before we start, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping for those people who are watching. If you there will be time throughout the presentations for questions. So if you have any questions, please do drop them into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, or pop them into the chat, and we'll get those asked to our guests as soon as we can. Can we go to the next slide, please, Jackie? So just running through the agenda, we've had the welcomes and the introductions. At 1:15, we're hoping to hear from Josh Winterskill about his accessible shooting, his experiences and how he might get involved. At 1:25, we'll hear from Andrew Whitaker from Activity Alliance and all that goes on with the organisation formerly known as English Federation of Disability Sports. Then at 1:40, we'll hear from Adam McAvoy, the National Development Manager for the Wheelchair Football Association, and some experiences from Brad Bates, who is part of a National League side and was part of the England team, and also coaches Powerchair football for another team. Then at 2:10, we'll hear from Hebe and Mike about Flying with a Disability and Aerobility, the charity. And then finally at 2:25, we'll hear from Thomas Martin about Boccia. There'll be time for Q&As at 2:40, and we'll have closing statements at 2:55. I'm going to hand over to you now, Josh.
Okay, over to me. Thank you very much, Kath. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
I have a few nods. You can, yeah? Okay, great. Yeah, no, thanks for inviting me along to talk about shooting. I used to be, so for those of you who don't know me, I've got spinal muscular atrophy, diagnosed at 18 months old, and I walked, I think, until I was about 10. And up to that point, I did quite a lot of sports. So I did a lot of swimming up every morning before everyone else would go and swim sort of 16 lengths before school. And then I used to be actively involved in cricket and football and rounders and everything at school. And then as obviously the condition deteriorated, I then decided that actually table tennis was going to be my sport, and did a lot at school with table tennis. And I then had curvature of the spine, so I had scoliosis operation, and after the op I never really got back to doing table tennis as quickly as what I should have, and lost obviously quite a lot of strength. And I was very lucky that where I live in Somerset, so I'm down near Glastonbury Festival, and we have an event at the Bath and West Showground every year, or the Bath and West, sorry, have an event every year. And there was actually a disability sports event that happens across the show over the 4 days. And one year my nan was going there, and she was walking past and found this sports event taking place, and she decided to go in and thought, oh, actually, do you know what, Josh probably quite like taking part in all of this. So the following year I went along, and at that point I was fully fledged in my table tennis progress and training stupid amounts of hours a week. And I was at this event, and there were lots of activities like fly cast fishing, you had short mat bowls, you had wheelchair slalom, and there was a shed, and behind the curtain in the shed, one of the events was shooting, and I'd never shot before in my life. It was just there, and it was one of the events. And the year that I was competing, I decided I was in as an individual. They normally, you go in as an individual, and they do have kind of teams that kind of get together and stuff. And I went in as an independent. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen share now. And this is let me just see, hang on. Just let me know when you can see my screen. Hopefully you can see a screen with some targets, yeah? I'm getting some nods. So, yeah, I picked up an air rifle for the first time, probably at the age of about 13 or 14. Now, I believe this was my first carp that I ever shot. And this was five targets, 2 shots in each target from 10 meters. It's really hard to give you an idea of how far 10 meters is. But effectively, to kind of put things into perspective, if you look in the middle of this photo, if I zoom in, this inner white circle here is roughly about the diameter of your pupil in your eye. And this white dot is even smaller again. So the way I like to explain it is that this circle really here is about I would say it's probably the same size to the hole in a polo mint. And the pellets, you can see the holes aren't really any bigger than this circle. Now, the idea is to obviously get the pellet through this circle completely clean without touching the white lines. That's what they call at a high level as a 10.9, which is the highest you can score in a single shot. And this was the first time I'd ever shot with a rifle. So you can see the maximum you can score without decimal is 100, and I shot 94. Now, fast forward quite a few years, I only ever shot rifle once a year at this event, and went to university, graduated at uni, and then went into employment, and decided that in my evenings and weekends, I was, let's say I wasn't using my time as wisely as what I could have been. And I realized that actually maybe I should be doing a hobby. And I thought, I want to do something competitively. I wasn't, how do I put it? I'm a big football fan, but for some reason I never picked up wheelchair football, and I love football and I do need to give it a go at some point. But for some reason I ended up going with air rifle. And this was me probably about, I want to say about 6 years ago. This was at Stoke Mandeville, and this is how I started off shooting outside of the Bath and West. So I started going to Stoke Mandeville with Disability Shooting Great Britain for about, you would attend once a month, and you would shoot over 2 days, and they would have all of the equipment there ready for you. And you would go in and you would just shoot against the target. So it gives you an idea. Look, the target's on the wall in the background. I mean, this picture doesn't do the distance justice, but when you're looking through the sight at that target, it's very, very small. It's very, very small. So this is just a different picture of me. You can see here, kind of the rifle is on a spring, on a stand and a spring. And then when you first start shooting, the way it worked for me is that I had my arm on my armrest, and I was obviously just resting my hand. Now, for some of you, this actually would not be feasible. And I think the beauty with the air rifle is that it's an extremely adaptable sport. And there's one chap in Sweden who's got muscular dystrophy called Philip Jonsson, and he competes at the highest level. And he recently won, I think he won gold at the last Paralympic Games, I think, or the World Championships. And he's absolutely flying, and he has less movement than what I do, and he's able to shoot at the highest level. Now, the way shooting works is that you kind of get classified based on your ability from your waist up. So it doesn't matter if your legs are fully functioning and you're super strong. It's all about your upper body that you get assessed on. So I'm classified, and I think Philip's probably similar to me. So we're kind of classified as what they call SH2 shooters, which means that you have the benefit of having a spring, and the spring comes in 2 different settings. You have a soft and a hard spring, and It just means that the harder the spring that you have, the less movement you get in the rifle when you're looking down the target. So if I just kind of fast forward a little bit to kind of where I am today, this in shooting, there's kind of two key disciplines. You have what they call standing, and then you have prone. Standing is where you shoot without a table, where your elbows are kind of hanging, so to speak. So you can't rest your elbows on your legs or onto a table. Now that's quite difficult for most people. I mean, Philip manages it probably because he's got quite good grip strength. But the beauty with this sport is you can adapt the rifle pretty much to suit your needs. So you can get sight raisers to bring the sights to your eyes. The idea is you bring the rifle to you rather than you take yourself to the rifle. And this position is my standing position, and I've only just started this about a month ago because actually I started standing kind of at the beginning and then ended up going to prone and just loved prone more. But in order to be multidisciplined and compete for GB, you need to be multidisciplined. So I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures here. I'm just conscious of time as well. This is me shooting at the British Open back in 2019. You can see that I've got a slightly different table in this photo compared to what I just showed you. But this was how I started out with my rifle and my stand and my spring that I had. Again, here's another photo. Obviously, I can't hold the rifle. But if we fast forward to kind of today, this is my setup today. So you can see my elbows are on the table is attached to the chair. I've got the rifle, so the rifle comes up to my head position. I am leaning forward here. And you can see the rifle is connected to a computer, which tracks my movement on the target. And then you've got a screen above my rifle on the left, which is actually when I shoot pellets through the rifle, it goes onto a screen, and you can see there where the pellets are going. So it's right in the center of the photo that I showed you at the very beginning. And if I just quickly show you this photo. So the way shooting works, if you're shooting in a competition, is that you're required to shoot 60 shots in an hour in prone. And if you're doing standing, you have an hour and 15 minutes. Now, this is a group of 60 shots that I took on a target in a competition. This was, I'm trying to think when this was about 2 months ago, something like that. And you can see here that I shot 629.6, which is an average of around about 10.49 a shot. So, you know, when I mentioned at the beginning, 10.9 being the pellet going straight through the hole, 10.49 or 10.5 is not far off that. Now, at the highest level in the world, in this particular discipline in prone, in SH2, you're looking at around about 10.6 a shot. So you're looking at a score of around 636 to make a final in the Paralympics. So where I'm at the moment is I'm on the Great British Pathway. I'm on the Great British Talent Pathway program. So where I sit is just below the squad. So you have the National Academy, and then I'm kind of next in line trying to compete for a position on the squad. So I'm now going to Hanover in Germany in May to get my international classification. And hopefully over the next couple of years, I'll be working my way towards competing at Los Angeles in 2028 and then Adelaide in 2032. So in terms of my Paralympic or GB journey, I'm still at the very beginning, but it's taken me 6 years to get to this point. So yeah, that's shooting very quickly in a nutshell, very high level. In terms of, you know, you guys and ladies as well can shoot this, for it's highly adaptable. We have people with visual impairments that have no sight at all that also shoot. It's really a fascinating sport. And the beauty with air rifle as well is I can be competing against somebody that may be paralyzed from, say, the chest down, or I could be competing against somebody that perhaps only has one arm but has full upper body strength. And the idea is that the sport is designed in a way that you have different pieces of equipment for you and your rifle to balance out the playing field. So you're competing against such a wide spectrum of individuals with a whole range of different disabilities. but based on the classification, it makes it really interesting, dynamic sport. And it's a shame because this sport doesn't get televised a lot, probably because it is shooting. But in terms of accessibility for people like ourselves, it's actually a really good sport to get involved in. So there is information you can find out online. You can type in disability shooting Great Britain or British shooting, and you can find out lots of information. Or if you want to badger me on social media, then by all means you can do so. But I think my time's up now. I think I've gone over slightly a little bit. But yeah, that's me and my intro into sport, really, or particularly air rifle. So yeah, any questions if we've got time?
Just thank you very much, Josh. It was really, really interesting. And it really was a whistle-stop tour, but very interesting to hear certainly about the fact that it's the equipment that levels the playing field as such. I think that's quite a unique way of doing it.
Yeah.
If we have any questions and people want to ask, can they get in touch with you at the end?
Yeah, just badger me either by email or by social media, whichever way you want to get involved. And then if anyone wants to get me in a powered wheelchair football, then please reach out, and I'd be more than happy to give it a bash because I reckon it'd be great fun.
We'll hear more about that a little bit later, Josh. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thanks very much.
Thanks all. Take care.
Thank you. So we're moving on now. We're going to be moving on to talk to Andrew Whitaker from Activity Alliance. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and obviously thanks for inviting us along. Kath, thanks for bearing with us and bringing us along to this. I think just a little bit to start off. Hopefully it'll help to give you a little bit of an understanding of myself. So I had an operation when I was 9 for a childhood osteoporosis called Perthes disease on my hip. And unfortunately didn't go the best, so ended up kind of utilizing a wheelchair from then. And then obviously through the operation as well, kind of muscle atrophy that obviously affects my kind of left leg, hips, and kind of lower back. So as you can see, I'm kind of slouching a little bit in my chair, holding myself up with it. So that's kind of me as far as that bit. But then probably like us all, understand the power that sport physical activity has, that it was just my release. It was my way of doing what I could, connecting with people, socializing, helping to manage my long-term health condition, getting out and about and kind of just living the best life that I could in whatever way it was. So I think the saying is jack of all trades, master of none. That probably describes me quite a bit. So I have dabbled in probably every sport you can think of, and been probably jury average at every single one, if not below that. So I did do a little bit again around archery and other things, some Paralympic sports, again, which was brilliant. I did have a go actually rifle shooting, but I had a go at pistol shooting with it, but yeah, I wasn't too good at that either as well. My sports that I kind of stopped with for a little bit was disability cricket. I ended up, probably people tell from the accent, I'm kind of northern based, so I ended up captaining the Lancashire disabled cricket team for I think 8 years, and we were quite successful as far as winning the county championship 6 out of them 8 years. So we did really well, and that kind of got me a bit of a sign up into the England team to the through the ECB, which again I think I still am at the moment, and I think with the change in format, one of only 3 people to ever play cricket in a wheelchair for an England team, because now they've separated the sport as far as they have an ambulance and a wheelchair option, if anyone wants to take that on board. And then found I was getting probably a little bit too old to get round the field a little bit. The grass was getting a little bit long. It was getting stuck in the wheel. So I don't know why, but I then ended up going and trialing out for some Paralympic sports, and tried out loads and loads of them. powerlifting was there on the day, never got invited to go along. So I thought, oh, I'll train in the gym, because I found if I kept myself in the gym, it was a little bit easier to get my chair around. With where I live, there always seems to be uphills, there's no downhills. So it's a little bit hard to get out and about. But then ended up taking up powerlifting. And again, fast forward that the classification system wasn't kind to me. So Paralympic sport was something that I couldn't take part in, but now I compete against people without disabilities in powerlifting. But obviously at a disadvantage, because I'm kind of using from my stomach upwards and with it. But again, really great challenges, met some amazing people, and really use it as a social side as well. So bored you enough about me, and let's move on to why I'm actually here. So Activity Alliance, obviously I'm really fortunate to work for Activity Alliance. We're a national charity, been around for about 20 years, and as Kath said before, used to be called the English Federation of Disability Sport. But obviously kind of had that rebrand and understanding that sometimes the word sport turns people off, and maybe not everybody sees themselves in sport. So kind of that physical activity side is really important for people. So they had the rebrand. I've come in, I'm just coming up to a year in Post, and my role is as the strategic partnership advisor for the Northwest and Northeast. So what does that mean then, really? So as a charity, we look to be the leading voice for disabled people in sport and activity, and making sure that we reduce the fairness gap that disabled people do experience through embedding inclusive practices and changing the perceptions of disabled people. So that's kind of our top line as an organisation. When I use the terminology disabled people, obviously it's kind of taken from the social model. So deaf, disabled people and people with long-term health conditions. It's just a lot to say each time, and I probably won't get through it all the time. So hopefully people are okay with that terminology. And as I said, as an organisation, we obviously do work towards a social model of disability as well. So within our functions, or within our kind of charity, we've got kind of a few different areas that I wanted to just kind of highlight. And the first one, if we go to Jackie to bring up the slides for us, and just as she's finding them, just to introduce like through our external affairs team, we have within there, or we will have a campaigns officer, but to lead on the campaigns at the moment. One of the important ones, which I thought was really good to share today, was what came through some research that we did with disabled people around My Active Futures, and that's around young people with a disability impairment. And what came from there is the Who Says campaign. And then there's 4 little videos around just the questions that was asked and the answers that were given. So it'd be quite nice, Jackie, if you're okay to play them when you've got a second. Thank you.
No. Why?
Young disabled people should sit out of PE lessons.
Who says?
I just ignore those people and then I just go for it anyway.
My opinion is that's a cop-out. If you've got a child with a visual impairment, you learn about that impairment. You learn how to adapt.
They're no different than anybody else. Everybody should have a chance. It's heartbreaking watching them be told they're not allowed to do something else.
I would never sit out of a PE lesson, partially because I'm good at it and I enjoy sport.
Most children who don't have a disability have a huge choice of activities and sports that they want to take part in, and I think that disabled children should have that same offer.
The school said I can do everything, and it just makes me really happy to be in school.
Call time on negative perceptions. #WhoSays.
Thank you very much. There are a few others, but I'm just kind of looking at time, and maybe we won't play them all today. But if we share the links within, but the kind of the 4 areas that it covers was obviously young people shouldn't sit out of PE lessons, which is the video that we've just watched, and then we've got disabled people can't be leaders. And disabled children can't grow up to be active adults, and families can't be active together. So Jackie, if you're okay to stop sharing, and then thank you very much. So again, really important for us to make sure, and hopefully it came through really strong there, and hence when I had the conversation with Kath, was about how we utilize that the power of people's lived experience and authentic voice, and we make sure that we champion it through obviously all our different means. So again, I think Kath was talking about, you were looking at further elements of obviously this kind of program around how campaigns work, and again, it was just to say obviously as Activity Alliance, we're looking at doing exactly the same as well. So if there's some collaboration that people feel, or kind of anything that they think's really high on priority list, then obviously we're trying to here to do the same as well. So yeah, I think that was one thing I wanted to highlight through there, and again through our external affairs team. Communications massively important, and we've actually got resources and research to help organizations to have more inclusive communication, and how we put that information out there. So again, a really great function that we have as an organization, for hopefully that people can help to help make activity inclusive for people with and without disabilities. And that moves us on to our research. Everything that we have is from disabled people. All our research, all our insights, all our information that goes out is all from disabled people, and through our research team, that's really, really important. So some of the latest research that we just had is around inclusive recovery, and that there is still the perception that disabled people need to be part of them conversations when we are restarting activity, and how can we make sure that we could co-produce it with disabled people. So again, really champion everybody on the call and who watches this to really be part of them conversations, where obviously the activity you think that's relevant for you. What we're getting from providers is that they have a fear factor of engaging disabled people, and how do we help to reduce that fear factor through education. We've got our inclusive activity program, which is delivered through our programs team, which helps to try and raise people's confidence. But also, I think the other thing is, it doesn't always have to be us. There's other organizations out there that really deliver great sessions to help to reduce that kind of fear factor, and actually having disabled people as part of them conversations at the earliest stage is the best way that we really want it to happen. We can't get away from the cost of living, the finance. Organizations are also having that problem as well. So that came out as a real big barrier as well, the cost of living, and obviously heating buildings and other things as well. But again, where we can create, and a couple of people on the call have already said they're based in the middle of nowhere, how can we really create them really local inclusive opportunities, so that transport is maybe not just as difficult as what it would be traveling kind of out and about with it. So I think kind of a big stat I wanted to say to everyone, and what disabled people have told us around inclusive sport and activities, that 2/3, 64% of disabled people would prefer to take part in sport and activity with both disabled and non-disabled people. That's what we've been told, and actually that's what we're trying to work towards, and that's what we're trying to embed across different organisations. Before I get kicked off and Adam comes on, and a better presenter comes on, I just wanted to finish off with a few things around. It's all great, kind of what I said, and obviously other people on the call have really got some great opportunities for you to get involved with. I think for me would be to raise the profile of these active partnerships that are out there, and I'll share the links so obviously they can go out with this. There's also Parasport's website, again, which helps to raise profile of inclusive opportunities, and there are national disability sport organisations who are members of Activity Alliance, who help to provide kind of impairment specific opportunities in and around sport and activity. And as Kath kind of said before, joining the gym, there are leisure providers out there as well who we're trying to work with to be really more inclusive of disabled people as well. So I will share them links, and the one before I get kicked off is obviously national governing bodies, which obviously leads on to, it's kind of why Adam's here. But just quickly, is there any questions that anybody has? Is there anything that, yeah, maybe they want to know a little bit more about?
Thanks, Andrew. I don't think we've got any questions just now, but I'm sure people are thinking about lots of things you said. I just want to go back to when you mentioned about the campaigning that Activity Alliance does quite a lot of. We are, as Pathfinders UpLift project, this is one of our Inform events, so it's information sharing, but just watch out in the future for some of our action events which will involve getting involved in campaigns that are really important to you. So if you are keen to get involved in campaigning about equal access to activities and sports, then get in touch and we will link you up. Thanks, Andrew.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Andrew has to get off now, so if you do have any questions, you can message me, and we'll our email will be shared with all those people that have attended. Over to you now, Adam, and Powerchair football.
Thanks, Kath, and thanks, Andrew, as well. And hello, everyone. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today to speak to you all about Powerchair football and who the WFA are and what we do. And obviously delighted that Brad, as one of our incredibly talented players, coaches, is here today to talk about his experiences and from his view as well. So I'm just going to give a little overview about who we are and what we do. There we go. Can everyone see that now, Kath? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay on my end.
Great.
Nobody else can.
So hello, I am Adam McAvoy. I'm the National Development Manager for the Wheelchair Football Association, and I have been in my role for just over 4 years now. I've been fortunate enough to be involved in Powerchair football for more than a decade, initially starting out down in Kent in a special needs school where the students had high levels of physical impairment and complex medical needs. And Powerchair football was the most popular after school club there, and then from there the school-based team evolved into a community team in Sevenoaks in West Kent in 2013, and basically that enabled us to make sure and open opportunities up for more people of all ages from all different parts of Kent and into the surrounding counties and into London as well could access Powerchair football and come and play for the club. And that has seen the club grow from just students to players from all across the southeast. And at one point we had 18 players ranging from the ages of 10 to 30. We've lost a couple, but we've still got really good numbers and we compete at a variety of levels. I coach and I also referee, and a bit like what Andrew was saying, a little bit of a jack of all trades and a master of none. So in terms of the WFA, essentially we govern the sport of Powerchair football in England. So you have the FA who oversee all of football, and then we are one of their disability delivery partners with our key focus and remit on Powerchair football. We initially started as a voluntary organisation and then became a charity in 2010. And as I said, we are recognised as the lead organisation for Powerchair football in England, and we worked very closely with the FA in football on a national level and also on a local level to try and effectively grow the game from grassroots all the way up through to our senior England side, who are managed and led by the FA. And I'm sure Brad will touch on his experiences of playing for England a little bit later on. And effectively, our aim is to try and support the growth and development of Powerchair football throughout England. And our purpose is to positively change lives through Powerchair football. And that's what we say is our main purpose for being. And obviously we work with the FA, as I mentioned, but we also work across local communities, local sporting organisations, sports clubs, schools, both special and mainstream, and other local partners, local charities, to effectively work together to grow the game. So what is Powerchair football? Well, I have a little brief video to play you here, and I hope you can hear it as well.
Powerchair football is played by anyone who uses a powered or manual wheelchair. The game is played using a specially designed sports powerchair. Each team is made up of 4 players with 2 halves of 20 minutes. Games are played on an indoor court with a larger ball and upright goalposts placed 6 meters apart. A push-in replaces throw-ins, and tackling is only permitted using the playing attachment at the front of the player's chair.
So that was just a little brief overview of the game that was created by the FA as part of some TV work that they do in promoting and broadcasting our cup final, which I'll touch on a little bit later on. But obviously some of the additional nuances of Powerchair football, which make it additionally inclusive, is it's mixed gender and open age. And by the nature of that, it's a really unique opportunity for people with high levels of impairment to access football. And it is the only active team participation sport for people who use electric powered wheelchairs. So obviously you have Boccia, as we'll be touching on later on today. That's considered a bit more of a static sport, whereas Powerchair football is a little bit more with the movement across the pitch. There we go. So in terms of who plays Powerchair football, as you can see there, we have over 450 players nationwide, and 2/3 of our participants, or close to 2/3, have neuromuscular conditions, muscular dystrophy and SMA being making up that's more than 60% of the participants that we have nationally. And then cerebral palsy make up 1/3 of our players as well. And then we have other players with other conditions as well. Also, obviously you can see there with the age range, we've got a 60-40 split in terms of those under 18 and over 18. But the key thing to highlight there is almost 2/3 of our players are 25 and under as well. So majority of our players are in the younger age range, but again, we have players that range from the ages of 5 through to 60, 65. And I know Kath herself and her club in Middlesbrough, they've had players of all ages and some players of more senior years, shall we say, as well.
I thought you were going to say that I was 65 then, Adam.
No, definitely not, Kath.
I can see Jackie sniggering.
But I think for me, the key point was it's to demonstrate and emphasize that the variety of impairments that our players have, and that inclusivity element, but also around the diversity of the age as well. And then in terms of our coverage throughout England, as you can see there on the map, we've got pretty decent coverage nationally. We have teams throughout England at all levels. And we also have competition at regional and national league level as well. So we have our national competition, which is across 2 divisions. We have 6 regional leagues. And we also, and that's both across the Northeast, Northwest, East Midlands, West Midlands, Southeast and Southwest. We have 40 clubs, and as I mentioned, over 450 players, and some of our clubs have multiple teams. So we have over 100 teams nationally as well. So using that map, obviously, depending on where you live, and if you're not involved in Powerchair football, there should be a club within a fairly close proximity to where you're based. However, obviously, as you can see there are gaps, and we as the WFA are working on these and trying to fill those gaps. And I'll touch on that in a moment as well. And obviously, as you can see there, we've got key regions and cities where we have good provision, and some of our clubs are also linked to the community foundations that are alongside professional clubs as well. And obviously with Brad's experiences, I'm sure he'll touch on, he was a key member of the West Bromwich Albion side for a number of years, as well as just one example. Linking back to the brief video that you saw earlier on, we have our equivalent of the FA Cup final. And that features as part of the FA Disability Cup weekend every summer. So it's obviously an annual cup competition, and that takes place alongside other impairment-specific formats of the game over the course of a weekend. And our cup competition is exactly the same as the running game FA Cup. It's open to all Powerchair teams across all levels in a knockout format to obviously try and get to the final, which is played itself at St George's Park, which is obviously the home of the England national teams, normally in the summer, mid to late June every year. And it's broadcast live on BT Sport and across their digital networks as well. And then Channel 4 also show a highlights package, normally the following week as well. And our recent finals over the weekend have seen a lot, almost 500,000 people watching the games across all the weekend. And one tweet of one of the goals that one of our teams scored last summer went viral and was viewed over 1 million times, which was something that we were absolutely delighted with. And again, it will be live this summer for people to be able to watch. So obviously, as I mentioned, there are some gaps in the country where there's no Powerchair provision. And if this is linked to where you are potentially based, just wanted to touch on how we establish new activity. And for us, there are 4 key elements needed. So obviously participants being one, having enough potential interested people to be able to take part. Obviously, the good thing with Powerchair football as a 4-a-side format of the game, relatively small numbers are needed. A suitable venue. So for us, as an indoor format of the game, we need a suitably sized hall, which is a basketball court. We also take into consideration things such as accessible parking, accessible toileting facilities as well. Storage is a great component that's really helpful for equipment, obviously with the power chairs that are used to play. And that can be either internal storage or external, but that's usually a conversation that takes place with the club and the venue once activity has been established. Local partners, as I touched on at the start around who we work with at a local level, they are really key in working together with us to provide that knowledge and expertise locally. And as I said, that's usually from sporting and footballing organisations as well, as the potential to link in with disability organisations, educational establishments. And then finally, keen and willing volunteers. As with any sport, for anyone, whether it be from an administration perspective or to establish a new club, and leading on practical elements such as coaching, maintenance of equipment and chairs. Keen and willing volunteers are absolutely crucial to creating a new Powerchair opportunities. And then from our point of view, we then provide the specific expertise and knowledge, whether it's through equipment, coming along to support with initial coaching and delivery of sessions to begin with. All of these combined together, and we look to work towards to create sustainable opportunities and clubs. And we've done a pretty good job so far from the amount of clubs that we have across the country. And just one great example here of a club that was set up off the back of COVID. So this is Farnham Powerchair Football Club down in Surrey. And they started working with us in the last summer, and inside just over 12 months, they have participants, they have equipment, they've secured funding, they have a great facility, and they are also taking part in regional competition as well. So the players have got involved with the local community, and the parents have been absolutely fantastic in driving things going forward. And we're really excited about the potential that they have as a club. Obviously, I've just spoken a lot about what we do, but I just wanted to emphasize that Powerchair football is more than just a game. So yes, obviously we provide footballing opportunities, but as a result of that, there are huge benefits for everyone, not just the participants. So obviously you have that competitive outlet, an opportunity to be able to play with and against peers. But there are huge social opportunities and networking opportunities to build friendships and networks locally and nationally. Huge well-being benefits in terms of physical and mental health, and key life skills are developed through Powerchair football. Communication, team building, dealing with success, dealing with challenges and loss. We've had many relationships develop. We've had marriages, we've even had births as a result of Powerchair football. So that's something that we are really, really proud of. And the life experiences, the enjoyment of our members really matter to us, and supporting them is really, really crucial in what we do. So I'm drawing to a conclusion now. So in terms of ways to get involved, just want to touch on a couple. So obviously playing, if anyone is interested, that could be a first route in, whether it's with an existing club or working with myself and colleagues to try and create new provision. It could be potentially volunteering at a local level at a club, or it could be on a wider level. And those could be generic tasks, or it could be linked to potential skill sets that you may possess. I know I talk about Kath and Brad. They do great work, whether it's locally, nationally, with the specific skill sets that they've got, the links and the contacts that they have, and it all helps to bring things together. And then finally, just simply sharing knowledge and raising awareness of the fact that Powerchair football exists is another great way to be involved as well. So there are various ways that you can get the latest news and updates. We have a great presence on social media. So my colleague Ryan does a fantastic job on promoting who we are and what we do through the usual Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram routes. Our website is the main hub for all of our information. And then we are developing our YouTube channel as well, where we have a variety of different videos, but we also stream our National League competition as well. So you can actually watch what games look like through our YouTube channel as well. Just to conclude, I'd like to play a 2-minute clip of what Powerchair football is and what it means to people, and that was produced earlier this year with support from MD UK. Powerchair football is a format of football designed for people with high levels of physical impairment, played using specially designed and adapted powered wheelchairs with an attachment on the front, enabling them to pass, shoot, and undertake all of the skills that you would see in running football.
Yeah, it's really diverse. I mean, yeah, I don't really have to explain it. It's just everyone's the same. That's it.
You could be any age, playing against any age or any gender. So you could be a 50-year-old woman and you could be like a 13-year-old boy, and you're level on the playing field.
It's a mixed sport, which I think is really good. There is not as much girls as there is boys. It is still quite male dominated. But I think because our sport is not technically on physical ability, it's more based on the mind and the prep and the chair, it should be mixed because that doesn't matter.
I think it gives you a vision of what everyone else's life is and get so many different viewpoints on certain situations.
I've gained a lot of friends. It's great for your mental health playing football, and it's good for your physical health as well.
My family have found a support group as well. It's not just the players.
That you feel you can talk to anyone here about anything.
Of the obvious element of playing sport, football is fun. Certainly when you're brand new to the game, getting in a chair and actually being able to go at fast speeds and spin and hit the ball. For new young players and experienced players, that huge element of adrenaline and the enjoyment that they get to play the nation's favourite sport.
If you go on the WFA website, there's like, it shows you what your most local club is and like a website or a phone number for your club.
I encourage anyone to get in a chair and try it.
It definitely brings everyone closer together.
Every year that goes by, we're growing the sport.
I think it just continue to grow and grow. It's a beautiful game and a beautiful sport.
Come along, come and have a look, get involved and just appreciate and admire our players and their abilities. Okay, there we go. Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. Apologies that I've overran, Kath, and welcome to the world of Powerchair football. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam, and don't worry, it just needs less time for Brad. Although I'm sure you've got a lot to tell us, Brad. I'm not gonna say anymore. I'm just gonna hand over to Brad, who has so much experience of Powerchair football at every level, and all of the other opportunities it brings as well. Go for it, Brad.
Thanks, Kath. So I'll try and whiz through it as quick as possible. So my sort of journey into Powerchair football started roughly around 15, 16 years ago. Massive love for football as a whole. I'm a season ticket holder at West Brom and always wanted to be involved myself in sport, but never knew of opportunities. Came across it completely by accident online and got in touch with West Brom and sort of went on from there. I spent sort of a good 10 years in the West Brom second team, now known as the Throssels, who also play National League level. But back then there was sort of no specialised chairs. It was attachments onto day chairs. I sort of just missed the car tyre phase. But that was sort of the very start. And so, yeah, I spent about 10 years in the second team. Without going into too much detail, I had a little bit of a health scare sort of around 2016-ish, which really kickstarted my football career off the back of that. Decided I was in the process of doing uni applications, decided to pull out of that, put all my time and effort into Powerchair football. I was training upwards of sort of 4 or 5 days a week, as opposed to most clubs in the country sort of train once a week, maybe twice at a push. So yeah, I put all my time and effort into there, managed to get promoted into the West Brom first team, and it all sort of happened really quick from there, to be honest. I won 4 successive National Premier League titles. Within my first season there, I got my first call up for the England training camps. And that was in November 2018, I think. And then in May of 2019, we went to Finland for the European Championships. That was my first ever competitive games for England, and we won that tournament, beating France in the final on penalties. So that was a massive experience. Obviously, technically the first English team to win a major since '66. So that was a huge accomplishment for us. And then just sort of moving on from there, I've progressed more into coaching as well now. I manage a team in the championship called Nomad Knights. So we've got players based all over the country. We've got some from Kent area, we've got a few from Bournemouth area, myself from the Midlands. So real sort of spread out team, not your typical team of local players, but as the sport's progressing, we're seeing quite a lot more of that. Myself, sort of in the last 6 months, I left West Brom, which was a 15-minute training journey, to move to Aspire, which is now a 2-hour Sunday morning drive. So again, quite a change, but it's just showing sort of the direction the sport's going in. We've still got a massive social element, but also if you really want to push that competitive level, there's opportunities out there to mix it up, and it's not just got to be local or it's got to be a nearby club of friends or whatever. You can put it onto at any level you want. Opportunities that have come up, I think sort of the best one to highlight for me personally would be off the back of the Euros. I actually got invited out to Australia to be a guest player for one of their club teams. So I spent almost 2 weeks in Australia, lived that I'd never even met previously in person. Got to train and play Powerchair football, which all I want to do a bit of sightseeing while we were there. Come home with another trophy, which is always an added bonus. But that just for me summarizes the sport as a whole. Like, it's not just within teams, the whole sport is just one big family. Like I said, I'd never met the family in my life and went and literally stayed house. Like, we knew each other for years. And even just at National League competition, Kath's part of that, Adam as a ref and a coach, it can be the most fierce competitive game for 40 minutes. And as soon as the final whistle goes, everyone's back to best friends again. So it's a very unique sport. That's sort of a quick summary of different experiences and opportunities that I've had throughout 15, 16 years. But my main message is just to encourage anyone to get involved however you can, whether it's playing, coaching, refereeing, even just spectating and sharing on social media. The sport is growing fast, obviously never as fast as we'd like. We can always be pushing it more, whether it's organisation or players and coaches as such. It can always be pushed even further, but everyone's working so hard, and the progress we've made over the last few years has been very drastic, and sort of the TV final proves that. Like Adam said, it only takes one clip to go viral. You'll remember, I think it was the season before last, there was a clip from Newcastle that ended up being shared on Twitter by Anton Deck. So, sort of, it only takes one clip and the sport could be in the spotlight for everyone. So it's on us to keep making those little potential viral videos happen, or keep pushing the awareness as much as we can, and who knows, will be televised hopefully.
Thanks very much, Brad. We've got a little bit of time at the end, so I'm sure people will have some questions for you. You're going to stick around.
Yeah, that's fine.
Brilliant. So from Powerchair football, we're going to move on to flying, completely different, with Mike and Hebe.
Thanks, Kath. Hi, everybody. I hope you can all hear me okay. I found this afternoon really enlightening, actually, learning about shooting and Powerchair football. I didn't know much about that, so I was really, really pleased to see that. We'll be spreading the word. Maybe you'd like to try and have a go someday. But yeah, the first thing I need to do is unfortunately give Hebe's apologies. Hibby's not very well today, so she won't be joining us. But she sends her best wishes and apologies. So without further ado, I'll tell you a little bit more about Aerobility. I've got a presentation. Hello and welcome to Aerobility. My name's Mike and I'm the Chief Executive of the charity. A very special charity that supports disabled people with all sorts of disability types through the magic and wonder of flight.
The feeling of being able to fly and once not being able to do it and now being able to do it is just amazing.
The one thing that's fantastic about Aerobility is the way that there is no difference between people who are disabled and those that are non-disabled.
Doesn't matter what disability you have, you can all be doing the same thing. I have Asperger's syndrome. It's freedom pretty much in the air, like.
They were geared up for my physical impairment. I was a bit unsure as to how they'd react to me saying I was registered blind, but the minute I mentioned it, they said, yeah, that's no problem.
I have to say a massive thank you to Aerobility because they turned my life around and they gave me that purpose back. They gave me that sense of worth again, and for that I'm forever thankful.
We're here to support you, whatever your disability. So please do get in touch and we can help you get into the sky to experience the wonder and magic of flight. So that gives you a little bit of a sort of view of what it looks like. Let's just look at a few pictures now and a few slides just to explore that a bit further. So there's Hebe, unfortunately. Not with us today, but Hebe has down loss syndrome, a progressive condition which effectively is making her muscles and her arms and all her limbs dislocate. But she finds sitting in an airplane, she's exactly as able as everybody else. Next slide, please. Here's Hebe turning an airplane upside down and taking part in a Farnborough Air show. But next slide. So a little bit about me. So I have limb girdle muscular dystrophy. Obviously, you've all noticed I breathe with the help of a ventilator. But I've always had an interest in aviation since I was a teenager, and I've kind of worked with other disabled people and the flying community to make sure aviation is as accessible as possible. So bottom left there, you can see me trying an early hoist, literally putting a ceiling track hoist, tying it to the roof of the hangar and lifting me into the airplane. That was my version of being a crash test dummy. But now we've refined it to really quite good quality and safe hoists and techniques, for example, that can lift somebody out of their chair if they need that help, putting them literally into the pilot's seat. And we find that actually flying is a very good activity for all disability types, whether it's a physical impairment or a learning disability, a mental health issue or a hidden disability, a neurodiverse condition. Flying is a great leveler. There's a little bit of magic in the sky, and it gives everybody the chance to experience that. Literally seeing the world from a new perspective. Next slide, please, Jackie. So I mentioned it already, but really it's about giving everybody the chance to participate in aviation. And there's a number of ways that we do that. Next slide, please. So the charity's actually been going 30 years. Next year, it's our 30th anniversary. And we operate currently from 2 airfields full-time in the UK. Blackbush Airport down on the Hampshire-Surrey border, and Tainton Hill in the Midlands, near Burton-on-Trent. The good thing about an airplane, though, is you can take it to other airfields. So what we always try and do, particularly during the summer, is take the airplanes and the equipment to other airfields on a sort of temporary detachment, so we can hopefully fly disabled people wherever they are in the UK. We're also working hard to actually increase our capability, because although the UK is a small country, when you're a charity trying to deliver a service, as many of you guys will know, that's quite a challenge. So to do that. We're hoping to add more airplanes, more airfields around the UK. But we've also learned about not just aviation around little airplanes, but also supporting disabled people to participate in all parts of aviation. We're helping airlines and airports to better support disabled people to travel, but also better employers of disabled people as well. And I think our youngest flyer is 7, and our oldest flyer is 100. So there's a real age range of participation. Next slide, please, Jackie. So there's 3 pillars to what we do. There's the flying side, the physical activity, the education side, and the advocacy side. Let's look at that in a bit more detail. Next slide. So in terms of experience, in terms of the flying rather, we have 3 main ways of doing that. There's the experience flights, where a disabled person can come to one of the airfields and have a flying experience, have a briefing, take the controls of the airplane, and have that first go. Obviously, flying's not for everybody. Not everybody goes on to carry on to do more flying, but it's great to have the choice and to experience that. And actually, people often ask the question, if I can fly an airplane, what else can I do? Maybe it's to go shooting, or maybe it's to go and play Powerchair football. It opens the mind to trying new things. Many people come back for respite flights, as we call it. So not necessarily learning to fly to get a pilot's license, but to regularly come and do something active, to be around other like-minded people, a shared interest in aviation. And I think, as we talked about earlier today, just getting out and about doing something is a good way to keep you fit, keep you mentally active, without really realising it. When you're doing something you enjoy, whatever sport or activity that is, the benefits really are really quite profound. And we're also effectively a flying school. So we're approved by the Civil Aviation Authority to teach disabled people to fly to get their pilot's license. Every year we have a number of scholarships through donations from typically the corporate world, helps us to fund disabled people to learn to fly. So take a look at aerobility.com if you'd like to apply for scholarship in 2023. Next slide, please. The second pillar of what we do is the education side. So working particularly with younger disabled people, with volunteers from the aviation industry, we do regular courses like our aviation education program, which is a year-long course every Saturday morning, every 2 weeks, where people with disabilities come and learn about different aspects of aviation. So that might be airspace design, it might be engineering, maintenance, how you build an airport, how you de-ice a runway, for example, all the different things. There's millions and millions of different jobs in aviation. So it's really about showing people that actually there's lots of different ways you can get involved, not just for fun, but maybe as a future career. Next slide, please, Jackie. This is something we love doing. This is to advocate for those of us with a disability in aviation. Every now and again, we try and do something a bit crazy that creates some good imagery and a good story. For example, that top image there is the Paralympic Games opening ceremony, London 2012. An incredible summer, I'm sure many of you will remember. But it was our privilege to create the world's first nighttime air display over a capital city with fireworks on the wings and a disabled pilot. So it was quite an interesting safety case that we had to prove to the Civil Aviation Authority to allow us to do that. But it was a great moment when the airplane came over the stadium and everybody cheered and we kicked off the Paralympics. Back in 2018, we got together just under 100 wheelchair users to set a new Guinness World Record, pulling a 130-ton Boeing 787 Dreamliner with wheelchairs. So, you know, the reality is that's not directly applicable to making aviation accessible, but it starts a conversation. The pictures appeared in all the press, and there was not a good discussion around disability and actually how the aviation industry often lets down people with disabilities because traveling is very hard with a wheelchair, through to having a hidden disability and not knowing quite how to getting worried about travelling, for example, going through an airport. We've also been doing some work with the future of flight, for example, eVTOL. So the future flying car, the flying Uber, that's coming quicker than anybody realises. And we're trying to make sure that disabled access is built into these future flying vehicles. 1/5 of the world's population has a disability, and this future of transport, if it doesn't think about disability now and adding accessibility into its DNA, there's going to be some real challenges. We're also working with the European Space Agency to make sure that space travel is as accessible as possible. You may have read in the press last week, the European Space Agency announced its first disabled astronaut. So it's great to be part of that and actually be part of the sort of medical studies, academic studies, working with para athletes and all sorts of disabilities, just to find out what the practicalities of space flight might be. Going into low Earth orbit for a disabled person is literally a year or two away. So the world is definitely changing. Next slide, please. I talked about eVTOL and design. You can see there we were involved in a design competition to design wheelchair accessible flying vehicles. And you can see the wheelchair ramp and the big open space there for a wheelchair user to wheel straight into one of these flying taxis. And on the right-hand side there, you can see careers that were formerly not accessible to disabled people, such as air traffic control. For example, getting a wheelchair up an airport control tower has never been an easy thing to do. But now there's such a thing as a virtual tower. This is actually London City Airport in the East End of London, but the control is done virtually from a building in Hampshire, which is fully wheelchair accessible. So this kind of career for disabled people to do things like become an air traffic controller is now very much a reality. Next slide. Another thing we've been working on is making sure that people with even quite profound disabilities, where going out and doing things is really tricky, particularly during the COVID era, was to actually put aviation into everyone's living rooms. So we developed something called the Armchair Air Show. You can go and take a look at that anytime. To look at some of the previous shows we've done, armchairairshow.com, but it basically takes an air show into the home. But we can also do things that you can't do with a real air show, which is to go behind the scenes, meet the pilots, and learn about things you couldn't normally do face to face. And we are sort of reimagining the air show experience. And it's a great way to get involved. Next slide. Another thing which is great fun is to actually build an aeroplane. So there's a couple of airfields where we have disability aircraft build projects. So a fully accessible, wheelchair accessible workshop where disabled people and able-bodied people are working together to actually build an airplane fitted with disability adaptions, which we will fly and operate by disabled people for disabled people, which I think is a really exciting thing to do. And the airplane should fly, in theory, next summer, which will be a really exciting moment for us and everybody that's been involved. But I hope you guys will come and have a fly. Right, next slide. So I just wanted to finish up really by saying, just give everything a try. We've heard about some amazing activities and sports today. And I think there's so many things you can do now, even with my level of disability: fly an airplane, drive a car, drive a powerboat, go sailing, ride a horse, take part in Powerchair football. These are all things that are open to really quite profound disabilities. So I encourage everybody to grab every opportunity, give it a go, find out what your poison is, find out what you enjoy, and then just keep doing it and work with the great organisations that are out there that we've heard about today that could support you in your aspiration to take it as far as you would like. So I think that's my final slide. Next one, please, Jackie. And just to say, if anybody would like to get in touch, it's nice and easy to email me, mike@aerobility.com. And yeah, if anybody's got any questions, to get in touch and we can tell you some more.
Thanks very much, Mike. Are you going to stick around to the end? We've got a little bit of time for questions at the end of the event.
Sure.
That's great. Thanks ever so much. It's really, really interesting to hear about. Well, I just thought it was about flying, but it's so interesting to hear about all the other things that you can get involved with, and just like Powerchair football, I suppose that there are other aspects. We're going to move on to our final sport of the day, of Boccia, and we've got Thomas from Disability Sport Wales. Welcome, Thomas.
Hello. Right, here we go. Well, just to say, I loved hearing about everyone's stories and organizations today. It's been really interesting. I'm not sure I can top the flying presentation, but I'll have a go. But anyway, thanks for inviting me onto this webinar today. I'm just gonna tell you a bit about Boccia and my journey and where it's taken me. So next slide, please. So a bit about myself and my journey. My name is Thomas Martin. I have a neurological disorder called dystonia. I have experience in Boccia and knowledge as a player, and I also have recently got employment as a Boccia coordinator, but we'll go on to that later in the other slide. But I've also competed in various competitions all around the UK and Europe, and I've also won the Welsh Nationals several times, and I have also recently graduated from USW University as a sports coaching and development graduate with a first-class degree. Next time. So I went into a little bit of detail about my new job role. So recently I have acquired a job role with Disability Sport Wales as the Boccia coordinator. So in my role, I am tasked with developing Boccia in the community and just getting the Boccia word out there, and also providing inclusive opportunities for all, and also at the elite level, I'm also supported with identifying the identification of new Boccia players for our database in Wales. So next slide, please. So what is Boccia? I hope everyone knows a little bit about Boccia. Yeah. Cool. So Boccia is a Paralympic sport based on similar to bowls, where you got a jack and you need to get your ball as close to the jack as possible. Next slide, please. So how to play Boccia. You can play Boccia in singles, teams, or pairs. And as you can see, you can throw, kick, or roll the ball, or you can use an assistive device called the ramp. Now I've got a little video to show you if it works.
Boccia is a Paralympic sport and is a game of strategy and skill. But how is it played? Two sides compete against each other as individuals, a pair, or as a team of 3. One side has 6 red balls, the other has 6 blue balls. One side plays the jack onto the court and then plays their first ball. The aim of the game is to get your balls closer to the white jack ball than your opponent. The side whose ball is not nearest to the jack throws until they get a ball closer or until they run out of balls. It is permitted to hit the jack, your own balls or your opponent's balls. Once all the balls have been played, one side receives a point for every ball they have nearer to the jack than their opponent's closest ball. Individual and pairs play 4 ends. Team matches have 6 ends. At Paralympic level, players are divided into 4 classifications, dependent on their impairment and functional ability. Boccia continues to grow internationally and provide opportunities for athletes with severe and complex impairments to compete at an elite level on the world stage.
Yeah, so as you can see, Boccia is a very inclusive sport, and it's the fastest growing Paralympic sport. So have we got the slides again? Yeah, so from the video you just seen, this slide just tells you how to play Boccia and the court dimension and stuff. So it can be played in singles, teams, or pairs, and it's whoever's the closest, the opponent who's furthest away keeps going until they're closer. Obviously, and it's a very inclusive sport. I would encourage anyone to get involved. Next slide, please. So this is just about the court dimension and the equipment involved. So as you've been told in previous slides, there are 6 red balls and 6 blue balls and a jack. And then 4 people who can't propel the ball with a hand or have the strength to. They can use an assistive device called the ramp. Now, as you progress in the sport, obviously you can buy better equipment and it becomes more tactical. So, for example, you can buy multiple sets, but you can make your own set with multiple sets, if you get what I mean. So there's different companies that provide the equipment. So there's a Victory Ball and Boccia Sports. So say if you can have 2 victory balls and 4 Boccia balls to make up your own set. But obviously, the equipment gets progressively more expensive as you go up the levels. And then the same with the ramp, really. The ramps get more expensive. So the court is the size of a badminton court, and you have 6 boxes, and if the red starts the game on the left, and then it goes red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, and the jack has to go over the V line to be eligible in court. Next slide, please. So in the previous video, it just gave you a little insight to the classifications. So there's BC1, BC2, BC3, and BC4. So if we look at the video will tell us more about the classifications in detail. So obviously you got BC1 and BC2, who are for neurological disorders, so like your cerebral palsy and neurological disorders like that. And then coming on to the BC3 and the BC4, which would include conditions more like your muscle weakening conditions, so muscular dystrophy, muscular atrophy, and stuff like that. And then the beauty about this sport is, like, so if you're a BC4 originally, and you're not able to propel the ball yourself, you can drop down into the BC3, so you can still play the sport at a high level if you wanted to with an assistive device. Next slide, please. So here are the organizations to do with Boccia. If you wanted to get involved in the sport, just have a look at these links and see if there's a club near you or how you can get involved in the sport. Next slide, please. Any questions? And there's my contact details if you want to contact me about anything to do with Boccia, obviously. Okay,
Thank you
great.
very much. Thanks very much, Thomas. It was
No
as good as all
problem.
of the other presentations.
Good. I'm glad.
Have we got any questions for any of the speakers that are here? So we have Adam and Brad still here from Powerchair Football, Thomas from Boccia, and Mike from Flying. But of course, we can get in touch with others from the other organisations after the event. I've got a question if nobody else has. This goes to both Thomas and Brad to start with, but I think it links in with Mike. Brad, you mentioned that you travelled to Australia to play Powerchair Football. How do you manage with your extra equipment? For a flight, ordinarily it's quite difficult. I don't want to get into a debate about how to fly with a wheelchair, but I wondered how you managed your extra equipment. So I'm assuming that you took your own specialist Powerchair with you to play football.
Yeah, with difficulty. But the main thing is, I'd say, obviously, just booking as early in advance as you can, and then we tend to just go through the assistance options with whichever airline we're going with. Most of them, touch wood, I've never really had much of a bad experience with an airline. Obviously lost baggage when we went to Australia. We got there with no baggage, but the chairs arrived. But we've never, touch wood, had any sort of damaged equipment or lost equipment.
Did they treat your chair as a piece of equipment, or did they treat it as another wheelchair?
They treated it as another wheelchair, but it was a bit difficult to get permission to take two.
Thank you. And Thomas, I was going to ask you where was the furthest that Boccia's taken you? We've already heard from Brad that the first was Australia for Powerchair Football. I'm not sure you can go any further. Did you visit New Zealand, Brad? When you were there, did you visit New Zealand or just Australia?
Just Australia.
Where's the furthest that Boccia's taken you, Thomas?
Well, I haven't been that far, so the furthest I've been is probably somewhere like the Czech Republic or the Netherlands. That was quite good.
Thank you. I've also, if nobody else has got any questions, I've also got one for Mike. I've racked up the questions because I was so excited about everybody attending. I mentioned this to Jackie earlier. You might have some questions, I think, but I will mention it. I saw that you are hosting a flight during the Northern Lights. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, Mike?
Yeah, well, just to go back to your first question, Kath, it is a real challenge traveling with a wheelchair. I learned very early on, one of the first times I travelled, when my Powerchair appeared on the conveyor belt with all the baggage in pieces. I thought this is going to be tough. So I've travelled a fair bit since then, and I think what I've learned is that actually it's the airport that has legal responsibility for transferring you as a disabled person, not the airline. But actually the airline often gets the bad rap for doing it wrong. So actually choosing an airport that can cope with it and an airline that can cope with it or better is always a good thing to do when you can. But also you cannot over communicate with everybody. So the more people that can tell about what your needs are, the better. But also try and get your wheelchair as close to the airplane as possible. Insist that your wheelchair goes to the door of the airplane, then transfer it to the armchair, and then transfer into the airplane seat, and then make sure you task one of the crew with taking your wheelchair very carefully and loading it into the baggage there, and then same at the other end, insist that your chair comes back to the door of the airplane so you can transfer back into your chair as soon as possible, really, so there's less chance for it to get damaged or lost. But yeah, so we will be doing that indeed ourselves on our Aurora flight in February. So thanks to the brilliant support of EasyJet and Q8, who are donating the fuel, we're doing a fundraising charity flight from Gatwick on an EasyJet Airbus. So basically we go to the Hilton, which is at Gatwick Airport, have a lecture about the Aurora from Aurora experts, have something to eat, and then we trundle through the airport to get onto the airplane, where we take off and fly right up to just the top of UK airspace, just near the Faroe Islands, and effectively fly around in circles, look out the window, and hopefully see the Aurora. So we've done it 5 times now. We've seen the Aurora every time. It's not guaranteed, but what you can guarantee is we do things like, the seatbelt signs in the airplane are always lit. So we get special permission to put black tape over those signs. So basically, it's completely dark in the airplane. You can't see your hand in front of your face when you're up there, up to the north. And even just seeing the night sky above the clouds, seeing the stars is incredible in itself. But we also have the expert on board doing the PA, but also on the way back down to Gatwick, we have a bit of an aerial party. So we have live music and we have some drinks and basically stuff you'd never normally do on an airplane. So it's it should be good fun. So again, we're working to make that as accessible as possible. So we will be taking disabled people of all types on that trip, as well as people that are buying tickets to help us fundraise. So it should be good fun. So help spread the word. Come along.
We certainly will do. We certainly will do. And also, I should just mention here that the next planned event for Pathfinders UpLift team is a webinar all about getting away. So it's all about holidays, and so that I'm sure we'll touch on the subject of flying, and those tips are brilliant. So thank you for that. I had a quick question for Adam as well, and Brad probably. If you had the chance to watch Aspire versus West Brom live on BBC One, or a Premier League match of your choice, whichever 2 teams you like to watch, which of those would you choose to watch live?
That's easy. I regularly would choose to watch a Powerchair game ahead of running football. And unless it's Liverpool, so cards on the table, yeah, Liverpool fan. So if Liverpool are playing, then it's a little bit more of a closer decision. But yeah, all the time, it's if Powerchairs are on, whether it's when it's on BT Sport in the summer, or whether it's streamed or through any format, that would be my preference. And I'm regularly watching, and probably watch more games of Powerchair than I do other formats in football, to be honest, Kath.
Can you be honest, Brad?
Yeah, it's been the same. I mentioned obviously my West Brom season ticket holder, but the amount of times I pass up on to go to extra training sessions, or even stuff that I'm not directly involved in, just to go along and help out or watch a few extra games, or just a little bit of admin or organisational stuff. Powerchair just controls my life to a degree, and would all take priority.
I have to admit to booking our Christmas fun session on the day of the World Cup final of the running game. So I'm completely with you there. And a final question then for Thomas, which is similar. Do you watch bowls on the telly?
Yeah, I have done.
And how does that compare to Boccia?
Well, I'm biased, and I would say Boccia is better and more dynamic, but I would say in Boccia you've got different types of shots that people play. In bowl you just got like people rolling it down the green, and then they might blast it sometimes. But in Boccia you've got people who blast things out of the way, go over the top. Like they can do a layup shot. down the side. So it's, I would say it's a little bit more tactical and dynamic, but yeah, Boccia every time for me.
Thank you very much. Unless we've got any other questions from the audience.
Got a question from Ravi and the attendees.
Brilliant, Kyle, go for it then.
Is there a Powerchair Football World Cup?
Go on, Adam.
Yes, Powerchair has a World Cup. In theory, every 4 years, but obviously due to COVID, that's had a bit of a knock-on effect. So the next World Cup is scheduled for next October 2023 over in Brad's old stomping ground of Sydney in Australia. So a very nice trip for those that are able to be selected to represent their country. And it's scheduled to be a 10-team competition, of which England are very much there and will be front runners for the competition. And I know Brad will be pushing very hard over these next few months to hopefully get himself on the plane as well to represent the Three Lions once again, hopefully to victory.
I've actually got one last question then that links in with all of that. And I think Thomas could probably answer this as well. How do sports halls differ across the world? Or do they?
I can talk from experience, certainly from a European perspective. So with another hat on of organising European competitions in a previous role, both at a club and international level, they can vary dependent on what the main sports are in that country. So if I use Denmark as an example of where we've held some of our equivalent of Champions League competitions for clubs, handball is a very big indoor sport in a lot of sort of Scandinavian countries and across sort of Central and Eastern Europe. And by the nature of that, their courts are bigger, which is great because obviously we don't need as big a sized court as handball, but it means that we can then actually utilize that space and have a lot of extra room around the sides. So that is really useful from our perspective. And then other experiences have actually seen, dependent on the venue, the hosts and the organizers actually bring in specific flooring. So fortunate, obviously, when Brad was in Finland with England for the Euros, that actually took place in an indoor 3G football dome with an athletics track around the outside, and they actually brought in a wooden floor to sit over the top, which was brilliant because it was custom made for our needs. And very similarly with the World Cup in 2017 that we had in Florida, that actually took place in an indoor arena which they used for things such as monster trucks. So it was a huge arena with seating all around, and again they brought in specific flooring for the competition to take place.
Thank you. Just if we've got a tiny little bit of time for Thomas and Brad, if you want to add anything more.
Yeah, just I would say it's just how the venue look after it really, and how they maintain the surface space. But I have used so in 2016 when the Paralympics were on, they used a floor called a Tyroflex floor. So it was like a mat they could just lay down and all the markings were on, and it was like just it was like a mat flooring really. So I used that in they did like they tested it out in one of the British Championships I was competing in Liverpool, and that was quite a good throw, but I think it's quite heavy, so and a bit expensive, so I don't think it's run out in everyday centre, but I think if you just get some tape and you can mark out a box you call it like on just an ordinary floor space, so yeah.
Thank you so much. We're actually running just a little bit out of time. It's due to end at 3 o'clock, which it is now. So I just wanted to make closing statements. So thank you all for coming along. Thanks to all of our speakers. It's been really, really interesting to hear about all sorts of sport and activities, including the ones I thought I knew about. We are hoping to host another event about sport and activity later in 2023, because we just think there's just so much to hear about. So you will all be welcome to come along and speak again at that. So we will be doing that later in the new year, but we'll let everybody know about that. So thanks again to everybody for attending, and we hope to see you in the new year.
Have a good Christmas, everybody. Take it easy.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, have a good Christmas. Thanks for inviting me again.